So tonight we're going to be in the book of Jeremiah. And what I want to do is I want to take a look at chapters 29 through 33. We've kind of worked our way up to here into the 20s or so. And just remind you about the mission, the mission and the message of Jeremiah in chapter 1, verse 10, where God tells Jeremiah, he says in verse 9, "Behold, I have put my words in your mouth." Then in verse 10, "I have appointed you this day over the nations and over kingdoms, to pluck up and to break down, to destroy and to overthrow, to build and to plant." So this is the mission and the message of Jeremiah to the people. He is an adjutant to the people and to the leadership of the nation of Judah. They have drifted away from God. They have failed in their charge to follow God. They have floundered. They are evil now. And God is removing them from the land. He's going to purify the land. In the books of Moses, they were supposed to call for a Sabbath every 7 years of the land, plant and harvest for 6 years, but then let the land rest for the seventh year. They had not done that in 490 years, I believe it was. So they were going to be removed from the land for 70 years. Give it 70 years to rest. And that's what's going on here. God is removing them from the land and asking them, or trying to get their hearts turned back to him. So judgment has come upon the nation. But in the middle of this judgment, in fact, at the onset of this judgment, comes the promise of hope. God always gives hope in judgment. All judgment should be restorative in nature. This is what we talk about with church discipline. When the church has to enact discipline on its members, when it has to step in and say, look, you are out of line. You are sinning, and we're going to call you out on that. And we're going to execute church judgment on you with removal from the body, whatever it is, whatever the church decides to do when enacting church discipline. The point isn't to punish or to remove, to cast somebody out forever. The point is to restore, to bring back into true fellowship with the body. So all church discipline should be restorative in nature, and God's judgment is restorative in nature. So he's not judging to end his relationship with Judah and the people. He is judging them to restore them to himself. So in chapter 29, this is where we see this come to the fore. In chapter 29, we start off in verse 1. "Now these are the words of the letter which Jeremiah the prophet sent from Jerusalem to the rest of the elders of the exile, the priests, the prophets, and all the people whom Nebuchadnezzar had taken into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon." Now this is the letter referred to in the book of Daniel. Daniel in his book says, "I was reading the letter from Jeremiah the prophet." This is it. This is what he was reading. In verse 4 of chapter 29, it reads, "Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, to all the exiles whom I have sent into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon, build houses and live in them, and plant gardens and eat their produce. Take wives and become the fathers of sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons and give your daughters to the husbands, so that they may bear sons and daughters and multiply there and do not decrease." So he's telling them, look, you're going off into exile. You're going to be in bondage to Babylon, but keep living. Keep living your lives. Produce offspring, and tell them to produce offspring. We don't want the nation to end. We want it to come back strong and healthy and rebuild the land when you get back. But he says in verse 7, And I think this is really interesting. When I was with Men's Challenge, and we were teaching men how to be good employees for their uh, employers and bosses, we would turn to this verse, and we would say, "Seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for its welfare, for in its welfare you will have welfare." And we used to tell these young men, and some of them old men of all ages, when you hire on at a place, when you take a job for an employer, seek the welfare of your employer, because as your employer prospers, you will prosper. This is how it works. Keep that employer in business so that you continue to have a job. And as your employer grows and the business prospers, your income and responsibilities will grow as well. This is the plan that God has. God has a plan for his people. This disaster isn't taking them suddenly by surprise. I remember when we were living in Colorado, we had some friends that they were building a house. They had bought a piece of land, and they went up there and they started to build on their land. They had dug out a foundation. They had started everything that they needed for the house. They bought a prefab house, and they got the foundation done, everything ready for the building. And the building was being moved in. It was on the back of a semi on a trailer, and the semi came up the road and went to the next lot. And they went to the driver and they said, "The lot's back here." And he goes, "No, the lot's up here. This is the address." And they said, "No, it's back here." They had built on the wrong lot. They built on the wrong piece of land. They had just built their whole foundation on somebody else's lot up there. And they called a prayer meeting at church. And I remember I was an elder at the church at the time. They called a prayer meeting. We gathered together to pray for them. And I'll never forget the prayer. I learned a lot in this particular prayer. As we went around the room saying, "God, show us what to do. Please make this work out," and everything. And I'll never forget that one of the men in the prayer room, he was always considered out of touch with the rest of the world. He was always just off in his own netherland, and never, he was a little bit out of touch with things. But this was his prayer. He said, "God, we know that you're not surprised by this. Show us what you're doing and how we can come alongside and accommodate it." And I thought, wow, he's right. God isn't surprised that truck went up to the wrong, or to that property. He's not surprised that everything was built on the wrong piece of land. So we changed the way that we prayed. "God, show us what to do." Okay, here we are. And the next day, the landowner called the owner of the other property and told him what happened. And you know what the other guy said? He said, "You know what? I like your piece of land better anyhow, so let's go ahead and swap." So they just made a switch. It was as simple as that. But we were all freaked out and worried about what was going on and everything. God has a plan. His people are being removed from their land. The temple has been destroyed. The whole Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem is in ruins. And the people are being hauled off, but God has a plan. Listen to the plan. It's in verse 11, but I'm going to read up into it. It'll start in verse 8. "For thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, do not let your prophets who are in your midst and your diviners deceive you, and do not listen to the dreams which they dream. For they prophesy falsely to you in my name. I have not sent them, declares the Lord. For thus says the Lord, when 70 years have been completed for Babylon, I will visit you and fulfill my good word to you to bring you back to this place. For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for calamity, to give you a future and a hope. This is God's plan. He's not trying to destroy his people. He's trying to restore them. He has a plan for a hope and for a future for his people. That's where this verse comes from. We took that verse and made it the mission statement for Men's Challenge. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare. Well, it was out of the NIV, plans for good and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope, something like that. So that's a really great thing. Even in our worst moments, even in when disaster is upon us and we don't know where to go and what to do, God has a plan for us. When I was visiting Jeremy, and I see he is on watching tonight, I tried to make that clear. God knows what he's doing. God knows what he's going through. God knows what's going on with his body. And he helps, he cares, he comforts, but he's going to use this for his glory somehow. Maybe that glory is in a miraculous healing, and Jeremy will be up and dancing in church this Sunday. Who knows? Maybe he doesn't have that for Jeremy. But he is with Jeremy in it. He didn't always promise us he would deliver us from bad times. In fact, he orchestrated this bad time for the city of Jerusalem. He didn't say, I'm going to deliver you from that. He said, I will be in this with you and bring it out to a positive end when it's done. So in verse 12, Jeremiah goes on to write, then you will call upon me and come to pray to me, and I will listen to you, and you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. Now, one of the things that Jeremy and I talked about is this very thing, that God uses these times to draw us to him. He's got our full attention now, right? Now your eyes are on me. It's hard to focus on God when things are going well. It's hard to think, oh, I need God now, when you have all the money you need, you have a big house, you've got a couple of cars, the family is prospering, your business is doing well. It's hard to keep your eyes on God when things are good. But when things go south, this is the first thing we think of. Oh boy, I better get right with God. This is God's plan for us, is sometimes he turns things upside down in our lives just to show us, hey, you took your eyes off of me. You're on me now, you're focused on me now. Do I have your attention? Okay, now let's go through this together. This is God's plan. And in verse 14, I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and I will restore your fortunes, and I will gather you from all the nations and from all the places where I have driven you, declares the Lord, and I will bring you back to the place from where I sent you into exile. So this is Jeremiah chapter 29, a great chapter of hope and promise. Now, I want to go to chapter 31, because in chapter 31 we see God starting to give us the promise of the future deliverer, the future Messiah. And this is what God is going to do with the hearts of his people. In Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 31, behold, days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not like the covenant which I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant which they broke, although I was a husband to them, declares the Lord. But this is the covenant which I will make with those, with the house of Israel after those days, declare the Lord. I will put my law within them, and on their heart I will write it, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And they will not teach again each man his neighbor and each man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and their sin I will remember no more. Now, this is the germination point of the teaching about the Messiah. Okay, this is God telling Jeremiah there's going to be a new covenant. There's going to be a new covenant in which the sins will be forgiven, and I will be your God, and you will be my people. He's talking about us. We now, you and I, are living under this covenant that is prophesied by Jeremiah the prophet during the Babylonian captivity. God is saying, I will bring my righteous branch. If we turn forward to chapter 33, okay, verse 3, Call to me, and I will answer you, and I will tell you great and mighty things which you do not know. Behold, this is in verse 14, Behold, days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will fulfill the good word which I have spoken concerning the house of Israel and the house of Judah. In those days, and at that time, I will cause a righteous branch of David to spring forth, and he shall execute justice and righteousness on the earth. In those days, Judah will be saved, and Jerusalem will dwell in safety. And this is the name by which she will be called, the Lord our righteousness. For thus says the Lord, David shall never lack a man to sit on the throne of the house of Israel, and the Levitical priests shall never lack a man before me to offer burnt offerings, to burn grain offerings, and to prepare sacrifices continually. This is the promise that God makes. This is the promise that Jesus, the Messiah, brought with him. Now, Ezekiel is going to, when we get into Ezekiel, he's going to talk about this. This idea of the righteous branch is, Ezekiel is going to tell this story in his chapters about a forest that is leveled. A great forest, and there's nothing left but stumps. But there's a sprig, a twig that is starting out of one of those stumps. And this is the righteous branch that Jeremiah is talking about. Don't forget, Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Daniel all lived at the same time. They were all God's men at the same time. Jeremiah he stayed behind in Jerusalem. Ezekiel was taken captive with the other captives into Babylon, and he chose to remain in Babylon. Daniel also was taken as a slave and brought into to Nebuchadnezzar's house, where he was reared and trained for leadership in the kingdom. But they all lived at the same time. They all wrote at the same time, and you'll see common themes throughout them all. But this is where we're going to end it today, right here with the righteous branch, the coming of the Messiah, the forgiveness of our iniquities, the people dwelling together, and I love where he says there will be no need for one to teach another, saying, Know the Lord, because we will all know the Lord. That's the coming day. So, all right, that's where we're going to leave it here tonight. Sorry I didn't get to say hi to all of you all, but God bless each and every one of you guys for being here tonight, and we will see you tomorrow night here on Digging Deeper Daily. God bless.